You ever have that feeling? You spend hours, maybe even all night, studying for a big test. You're highlighting, you're rereading, your notes look perfect, and then the next day, it's just gone. Poof! Vanished from your brain. It's got to be one of the most frustrating things ever. But what if I told you that it's not actually your fault, and that there's a much, much smarter way to learn? Well, let's dive in.
Okay, so first things first, we've got to understand the enemy here. Why does our brain feel like it's actively working against us when we're trying to learn something new? Well, the answer isn't about how much effort you put in, it's all about biology.
I mean, we've all been there, right? You have that moment of pure confidence the night before the exam, thinking you've crammed every last detail in there, only to sit down at your desk and be met with a totally blank mind. It's so common, it almost feels like a rite of passage for students. But here's the good news. It is completely avoidable.
Get this, 70%. Just let that number sink in for a second. That's how much new information the average human brain just throws away in a single day. This isn't a sign that you're lazy or that you're not smart enough. No, it's actually a built-in feature of how our memory is wired.
And yeah, this whole thing actually has a name. It's called the forgetting curve. It's a well-known scientific principle that basically shows how our memory just naturally fades over time if we don't do anything to hold on to it. So the bottom line is this. Those old methods most of us were taught, like cramming, are basically forcing us to fight a losing battle against our own brains.
And this, right here, this sums up the whole problem perfectly. Over on the left, you've got passive learning. You know, highlighting, rereading. It feels productive, right? But to your brain, it's just background noise. You're barely engaging with it. But then on the right, you've got active learning. And this, my friends, is where the secrets of the world's top students really lie. It's not about studying harder, it's about studying smarter.
So the big question is, how do we make that switch? How do we go from being passive learners to active ones? Well, we're going to break down 5 incredibly powerful techniques that will help you finally beat that forgetting curve for good. A lot of these are actually inspired by the super effective study habits of students in Japan. All right, our first technique is an absolute game changer: active recall. See, most of us think learning is about input, shoving information in through reading or listening. But the real learning, the kind that sticks, happens when you force your brain to pull that information back out. Think of your memory like a samurai's sword. You don't sharpen it by just looking at it. You sharpen it by striking with it. And every single time you pull a memory out of your brain, you're not just remembering it, you're reinforcing it, making that connection way stronger for next time.
And this is so important to understand. Active recall is supposed to feel hard. That little bit of struggle, that moment of frustration when you can't quite remember the answer, that's not a sign of failure. That's your brain physically working to build a stronger connection. That struggle, that's the magic.
So how do you actually do it? It's ridiculously simple. After you study a topic for a bit, just close the book, put your notes away. Then grab a blank piece of paper and write down everything, and I mean everything, you can remember about it. This little exercise instantly shows you what you truly know and, maybe even more importantly, what you don't know. And those are the gaps you need to focus on next. Okay, so if active recall is how you should practice, our next technique, spaced repetition, is all about when you should practice. You know, if cramming is like dumping a whole bucket of water on a plant once and just hoping it survives, spaced repetition is like giving it the perfect amount of water at just the right intervals. The whole goal is to review information right at the exact moment you're about to forget it. This lets that knowledge sink in deeper and deeper each time. And here's what that schedule actually looks like. You review the material one day after you first learn it, then again 3 days later, then a week later, and then a month after that. Each time you successfully recall it, you're basically hitting the reset button on that forgetting curve, strengthening that memory until it becomes a permanent part of your long-term knowledge. Now, technique number 3 really doubles down on this idea of consistency. It's the Kumon method, and it's all about turning learning into a daily habit, not some big, intense, rare event. So instead of trying to conquer a whole textbook in one night, you break it down into tiny, manageable daily chunks. It's just like building a giant tower with Legos. You add one small piece at a time, every single day, and eventually you build something massive and incredibly stable. And the power of this approach is just staggering. As James Clear puts it in his awesome book, Atomic Habits, these tiny, consistent efforts don't just add up. They compound. They multiply. Getting just 1% better every day makes you 37 times better by the end of the year. That's the mind-blowing power of consistency. This whole idea of small daily effort is really the heart of our fourth technique, the Japanese philosophy of Kaizen. It literally means continuous improvement. The idea is to just stop trying to make these huge, heroic leaps. Instead, just focus on getting a tiny bit better every single day. This approach totally removes the pressure and makes learning a sustainable, lifelong habit instead of some stressful, short-term sprint to the finish line. So, how can you apply Kaizen like today? Try this ridiculously simple 6-minute routine. Seriously, just 2 minutes of active recall on a topic, 2 minutes reviewing something you learned a few days ago, and 2 minutes of focused practice on a skill. That's it. It's so small you basically have no excuse not to do it, but if you do it every day, it will make a massive difference.
All right, our final technique is the one that brings it all together, because you can have the best methods in the world, but they won't work if you can't focus. This is where we talk about shu, which is the art of creating the right environment for learning. This is all about creating a ritual. Maybe it's sitting at a specific desk, turning off your phone, or putting on a certain playlist. These little triggers send a powerful signal to your brain that says, okay, it's time to get serious. It's time to focus.
So there you have it, 5 powerful science-backed techniques. Honestly, if there's one big thing to take away from all of this, it's this. Stop fighting against your brain and start working with it.
Because ultimately, it really just comes down to a choice. You can keep sticking with the old, passive methods of cramming and forgetting, or you can start using these active strategies and take real, lasting control over how you learn and what you remember.
But look, you don't have to do all of these at once. In fact, that would kind of go against the whole idea of Kaizen, right? So here's the most important thing to do right now. Just pick one. Which one of these techniques are you going to try this week? Whether it's that 6-minute study routine or just one simple active recall session, starting small is the absolute best first step to remembering everything.